Welcome back. Well, since Hamas seized control of the Gaza Strip back in June, the area has been isolated from the Fatah-controlled West Bank, and living conditions in Gaza have deteriorated. The Strip is still effectively controlled by the Israelis. It regulates all border controls, airspace and access from the sea. Most trade has been cut off, and fuel shipments to Gaza have been reduced dramatically. In October, the area's 1.5 million residents suffered from an almost crippling fuel crisis. More than 70% of the population is unemployed, and the majority of Gazans live in poverty. One of the main points of contention between Israel and Hamas is the ongoing violence between the two. Israeli incursions into Gaza are common. In the past week alone, 20 Gaza militants have been killed, and Palestinian militants continue rocket attacks into border communities, such as this one, which hit a school on Thursday. Joining us again are our guests in Gaza, Ahmed Youssef, advisor to the deposed Prime Minister Ismail Haniyeh; in Ramallah, Abdallah, chairman of the political committee in the Palestinian Legislative Council deputy; and in Jerusalem, Gerald Steinberg, head of Department of Political Science at Bar Ilan University. Mr. Abdallah, let's talk about this money promised at the Paris Donors Conference. $2 billion will immediately go to the Palestinian territories. Who's going to get that money?
The Palestinian National Authority. But before going into that, let me make two comments on the previous presentations. As far as Hamas proposal is, negotiations are entitled to the PLO. This is the agreement of all Palestinian factions, and no one faction can pass by the PLO and start offering offers on his own that harm the Palestinian stand, political stand, and the Palestinian national rights. As far as resorting to, from the other speaker, to old propaganda rhetoric about there is a unanimous call from all international community, whether in Annapolis or in Paris conference a few days ago, that Israeli occupation to the Palestinian territories must end, a Palestinian state must be created. The first step into that direction must be the freeze, total freeze of all settlement activities, including those related to natural growth. Any violation of this expectation from the international community is to be considered a slap in the face of this effort and a destructive goal on the part of the Israeli government, that Israel must stop doing that for the sake of peace and for the sake of its
Mr. Abdallah, if we can,
security and the security of others.
If we can go back to the money that has been pledged, who's going to get it, and will it be handed out at the exclusion of all Hamas employees?
There is no exclusion of Hamas employees. There is Palestinian National Authority. There is a legitimate government, which is the government of President Abbas. This government is responsible for Palestinians, for whether they are employees or citizens, the totality of them in the Palestinian territories, Gaza Strip, East Jerusalem, and the West Bank. It's one territorial unit, and the government is taking its responsibility in that direction. Its effort to lift the siege imposed on Gaza unfairly and to open the gateways to the international world, especially the crossings in Rafah for Gaza Strip, and take control of these crossings, is the effort of this government, and it will hopefully succeed before too long. So the ease on the lives of the Palestinians in Gaza will be felt.
Okay, Mr. Youssef, no sooner was the money promised, some $7.6 billion in Paris. I mean, there was a lot more than anybody bargained for. Then suddenly these attacks from both sides happened. What's the significance in that timing?
I don't know if I understand you well. I do believe that all that kind of money will go to the Palestinian Authority in Ramallah. The people will enjoy that money. Gaza will keep suffering, because we didn't see from the proposal which Mr. Salama Fayyaz submitted to the international community has anything to do with Gaza except to handle a sewage system somewhere in Gaza. That's the only things that we heard about the money. The rest of the money will go to the people in Ramallah. The same way they, after the Oslo agreement, they have a lot of money. We didn't see that much being help the infrastructure in Gaza. I do believe the same thing will happen, that most of the money will be wasted and spent on the security thing to satisfy the Israeli, to protect the Israelis. But when it comes to help the Palestinian, lifting the sanction, enhance the Palestinian life, I don't think that money will help the Palestinian people in Gaza.
Okay, Mr. Steinberg, the Israeli army says that more than 2,000 homemade Qassam rockets were fired into border cities. What impact is this having on Israelis there, both mentally and economically?
Economically, there's not really any significance, but in terms of politics, the government is there are demands from the Prime Minister, from the Israeli government, to find a solution, either military or diplomatic, as one would expect in any country in the world. If your people are being bombarded by terrorists on a daily basis, you want the government to end that. It's illegal, it's immoral, and I think the government is trying, the Israeli government is trying to find some sort of a mechanism for doing this. There was a great deal of reluctance, for instance, to cut back on the fuel and electricity, even though some of that is being used in order to create this, the missile factories and the rockets that are being sent in. But the Israeli government really didn't want to go through the process of having the Palestinian people suffer until it turned out there was really nothing better that was available. It's really the last step in the process. If the Palestinians in Hamas, in Gaza rather, if the Hamas leadership in Gaza wants to ease the plight of their population, if the people want to have better lives, if they want to get out of Gaza, if they want to import goods, if they want to end what they call the siege, they have to start behaving themselves according to the rules of international behavior. You don't fire missiles and attack your neighbors if you want that neighbor to provide you with fuel and other things.
Mr. Youssef, sorry, very briefly, excuse me interrupting.
Security ran away.
I see you shaking your head
so
there, Mr. Youssef. I mean, very briefly, how
behaving actually, the issue of peace, when we win the election, nobody let us actually, sorry to say that, in the beginning, when we win the election, I do believe that the world community tried to blockade the road for Hamas and not giving us to entertainment the Palestinian with our change and reform program. Regarding the things that this is Israeli gentleman talking about, the terrorism, actually, I would like to raise the question to him, whom terrorize whom? Who terrorize whom, actually? They are the Palestinian who really paying the price every day. We lost more than 50 Palestinians in the last just couple of weeks by the Israeli incursion. And they keep talking about these rockets as if it is a lethal weapon. And unfortunately, the world community still, his conscience is still unwoken, still need to be shaken and wakened up, actually.
Mr. Abdallah, very briefly, excuse me interrupting, we have run out of time. Do you think the situation in Gaza, with all that's been proposed, is it reversible?
Of course it is reversible. The people in Gaza will force their own opinion on those who are controlling their lives and putting them to the test. The situation is bad and going to worse because of these political proposals that are detrimental to our national rights.
Okay, Mr. Abdallah, thank you very much. Mr. Ahmed, Youssef and Gerald Steinberg, thank you all for your time and joining us here on Inside Story. And thank you very much for watching Inside Story. Goodbye.